Hello guys, welcome to another Fashions in-depth training. This channel is focused in helping you learn how to sew, and in today's video we are going to learn how to make this 180-degree circle dress I created and designed with an African print and a satin. So let's start with the upper part pattern creating. You need your satin, that's 2 yards, and 3 yards African print. I love working with set squares a lot. Your straight rule, pair of scissors, your chalk, and of course our tape measure. Let's start by unfolding our satin. And one thing I love about satin is you can decide to work with both sides depending on the type of design you are creating. So you can see this side, I'm going to use this side, but you can choose whatever side you want to work with. And I'll be using my bust measurements in creating my pattern. All you have to do is divide your bust measurement into 4 plus your sewing allowance. This dress I'm making is for an 8-year-old tall girl with her shoulder to waist 13 plus 1 inch allowance for the shoulder line and then the waist line stitching. And for you to get your shoulder to waist correctly, all you need to do is measure from the shoulder to 1 inch above the navel, and mostly it's from 1 inch to 2 inches depending on where you want your waistline to be. So I'm done with the cutting, and this is what I had. You can see that I had 4 pieces, 1 for the lining and then 1 for the main work. We'll be starting with the front bodice pattern, and we'll be using our back measurement for that. Her back measurement is 12 inches plus 1 inch, giving us 13 inches divided into 2, giving us 6.5. So you mark your 6.5 and then also your 6 inches. And this type of armhole I'm going to, this is a 1 inch drop down on the shoulder, and this type of armhole is closed, so I'm using 7 inches. You can see that in most children clothing, they are, especially with the girls, we have open armholes, but this type of armhole I'm creating is closed. That is why I used 7 inches for that. 1 inch off for the shoulder drop down and 1 inch for the stitching, a ½ inch for the stitching. So in the end I'm going to get 5.5. And you can see I'm creating ½ inch into the main bodice. Yes, this is to free the armhole at the front bodice, but we will not be applying this method for the back bodice pattern. It's only going to be at the front. So after this is how the shoulder is going to be. Time to create our front neckline. One thing you have to notice, if you are creating a pattern with a zip at the side, you have to make sure you create a wider neckline in order for you to fit the head. So if you make the neckline smaller, it's not going to fit the head, and you move back to square one. All the work you do is going to be square or cos 90. So you have to make sure you create a wider neck so that it can fit the head. Just join and later create your curve. For you the newbies, This is how you hold your scissors and place your hand firmly when cutting. Remember, we are working on a satin, and there are some fabrics which are very difficult to work with. If you watch carefully, I'm not cutting through the half-inch I created into the main bodies. I'm cutting at the main armhole. You see the half-inch is still there. And after, make sure to get rid of any unwanted fabric from the main work. And when it gets to the front neckline cutting, watch how I turn my scissors and how firmly I hold my work. This is to create a smooth curve at the neckline, and after, make a 1-inch drop down at the waistline. This is the correct procedure in cutting a drop down, and make sure to get rid of any excess fabric. So you can see that there's an extension of a fabric there, so I trimmed it off. Let's move on to the back bodice pattern creating, and you need not go all over again. All you have to do is just place your front pattern on it, and then you create your neckline. For the armhole is already created, so all you have to do is get rid of the excess fabric, then you are good to go. We are done. Let's move on to trimming the half-inch armhole we created into the main bodies. But make sure you pin your work together to prevent shifting when cutting. So we are going to get that part off. Just watch how I position my scissors when cutting. Now time to work with the back bodice pattern, and I'm not satisfied with the neckline, so I'm going to go a little bit deeper. Since I'll be creating the zip at the side, I want a wider neck in order for it to fit. Also, watch how I turn the scissors when cutting the circle. So we are done with the trimming. This pattern I created is not the main back bodice pattern, but rather I'm going to create it. But before that, look at the difference between the necklines. Okay, so I have it wider now, and this pattern, just as I said, is not the main back bodice pattern. It's a pattern I created to make holes for the strands I'll be creating at the back. If you watched the video carefully, the back has bracing, so this is what I'll be using for the bracing holes. Then after this, we move on to the main back bodice pattern. So trim off. I'll be going a little bit faster with the cutting from here. Okay, so we are done. Let's move on with our African print. I really love this African print because of its rainbow colors and then the spiral shape. So we'll be using this part of the spiral for the skirt and then this part for the bodies. Let's cut that part off. Okay, we are done. Make sure to pin your work together whenever you are joining multiple patterns. Doing this in order for me to get rid of the excess fabric from the neckline. So one thing is, when working with African prints, make sure to mark the negative side in order for it not to confuse you, because it can confuse a lot. So this is how I'm going to create my design. You can decide to go by this way or create your own. Whatever you decide, it's okay. So this is what I created. We are done with the front bodies. It's now time for me to create my main back bodies pattern, and as usual, I'm making sure to pin them together and then also get rid of my armhole, the excess fabric. Make sure to trim off any excess fabric. You see, I did not pin all my work together, so I'm having difficulties with shifting here and there. So let's move on to our back neckline creating. With this type of neckline, you can decide to go a little bit deeper depending on your client's request or however you want it to be. But I'm deciding to move a little bit upper. Then after you join the two lines together, this is a square neckline creating. So in today's video, we've created two types of necklines, the round and then the square. Remember, I trimmed off some inches from the front line, the back neckline, and I have to apply it to all the other patterns in order for me to get an equal shoulder line. We are done with our front and back bodies pattern creating, and we'll be proceeding to our sewing machine, but I'll be going a little bit faster than this. Just as I said, make sure to mark the negative parts off in order for it to serve as a guide when working with your fabric. And I'm going to show you a simple method which will guide you when sewing, especially for my beginners. All you have to do is just create a 1/2 inch sewing allowance, so you'll be sewing along where I marked my 1/2 inch. Just watch how I place my hand on my work while stitching. You know, we'll be making a curve, so watch how I place my hand. Sometimes I use 2 hands, and then sometimes I go by only 1 hand. And after stitching, make sure to trim off every excess thread. Then you proceed to notch. So notch all the curved area in order for it to be easy when turning the fabric over. And one thing about notching is make sure not to cut through your thread. Other than that, you are going to add more inch to the stitching and it's going to affect your work. So just look at how it turned out to be. It looks like I have ironed it. And repeat the same procedure for the satin. Just watch. You see that with the satin I used both hands because the curve is more deeper, and if you are not an expert you end up going off track. So you have to go with the two hands when stitching. After, just as I said, don't forget to notch. So you see that we had the curve so easily. Without notching, we are not going to get the curve smoothly. So this is what we had. Don't forget to pin your work together. So I'm proceeding to the armhole stitching, since I'll not be making any sleeve for it and it's coming out to be a sleeveless. I have to seal the armhole, so just watch how I'm going to seal it. This is not the normal armhole sealing. This has 4 fabrics which I'm going to join together, so just follow the procedure and let's keep going. Please don't forget to post your comments at the comment section. I would really love that. All my fabrics are in position before stitching, so you could see I'm arranging them neatly. Watch how I make my curve. And just as I said previously, please do not use one hand when you are not an expert. You end off track. And also make sure to arrange the armhole. This side is going to only be 2. It's going to be 2. So stitching this part is not going to be difficult like what we made previously. But make sure to keep both fabrics in alignment while stitching. So just watch how I curve my work. So with a smooth curve. If you can't do this, please don't forget to make your half-inch mark. It's very necessary for the beginners, but if you're already in the field, I believe you know how to make your curves correctly. If you don't know how to do it, to just give a half-inch rule and then you are good to go. And after, please don't forget to notch your armholes. Remember, they are also curves. These curves are very, very deep, so if you don't notch, it's going to affect your work. Let's turn it over and see what we've produced. So after stitching, please, and one thing too, don't forget to get off your pins. Please don't leave any pin. So look at how the curve turned out to be. So smooth. You know, satin is not relaxing like African print, so unless you press before you get the curve well. Repeat the same procedure for the back bodies, but this time around there's going to be a little bit different in the stitch because this one has angles. So I'm going to teach you how you are going to get your angles correctly. That is if you don't know how to stitch angles. So when you get to the angle, make sure your needle is pinned in your work and then just turn it around. Please do not remove your needle whilst turning around. Make sure you have your needle in your work before turning around. So time to create the bracing holes, and for me to get the correct measurement, have to place it on top of where my angles are and get the mark. Or you can either take the measurement, but I prefer this method. So after getting your mark, you just take the measurement and transfer it to the other side of the fabric. So after you getting your measurement, proceed in cutting it into pieces. Just keep creating it. You create it on both sides. Then after you place the lining on top and then stitch. Then you repeat the same procedure as we did with the other armholes. So you stitch both together, and in the end this is what you are going to get. Forgive me for not giving you the full video at this part because my lighting system was very poor. So after joining the shoulders, this is what you are going to get. I have many videos on how to join this type of shoulder, so please, if you do not know how to do it, just go through my videos. I have some videos that I made in series and I believe you can learn from it. If you are not able to, just let me know and then I'll make a video on that again to help you. With your bust measurement, just divide your bust into 4 and then your waist measurement also into 4. So I told you I was working with bust 26 divided by 4, giving me 6.5, and waist 22 also giving me 5.5. so I have to trim off any excess unwanted inches. So let's see what we had. Simple and neat. Let's move on with the pattern for the skirts, and I'm making sure I'm using the right place. So all you have to do is just fold it in an angle form. As I already said, this is 180 degrees circle dress. So for you, my cherished beginners, I'm going to teach you a simple method where you can get the waistline without hassle. So just follow the procedure. It's just simple. This wind is disturbing me. Okay, so let me fix that. Let's move on with our cutting. So after you take your measurement, and you can see I had 4, but I need 5.5 plus sewing allowance. So I'm going to need somewhere 6 and 6.5. So just go by this way until you get your waist measurement. But I'll be cutting from this side, and I'm making sure to deduct my shoulder to my waist from my full dress length. So that is what is going to give me the skirt length. Once again, you deduct your shoulder to your waist from the full dress length. So example, supposing I have dress 40, dress length 40, and my shoulder to waist is 16. All I have to do is deduct my 16 from the 40, and the rest is going to be my skirt length. But don't forget to add more allowances, since we've not had the waist length or the waist yet. So you can choose to add more inches to it, so that you don't end up shortening your dress length. So after cutting, make sure you pin your work together in order to hold both ends together. So I'm pinning my work, and after I'll make sure I have the waist. But no, I'm not yet there. I'm not there yet, so I'll keep measuring. So let's see if I get it this time around. Okay, let's go. So as you can see, I have it now. So that is my waist. When I deduct 5.5 from it, at least I'm going to get some allowance for the sewing. So this is how it's going to be. Let's move on with our designing. This method I'm using is going to serve as a guide for me to create the curve I want to, or to get it at the right portion. So if it will confuse you, just measure your waist or use your waist measurement and you will get it correct. So after shaping, we just pin them together, and you can see our spiral. Double cut, and later you stitch them together, and after stitching you press. This is what you are going to get. Okay, so from here I'm going to be a little bit fast because all I'm going to do is create the back of the skirt, and I prefer mostly when creating the back using this method, but you can choose to leave where I made a cut, and you can choose to leave it, but mostly I prefer to create a gap there and later make a stitch. So this is where I'll be creating my zipper allowance, and after joining them together I used 1.5 for the zipper allowance, and where I marked is where my zip will be ending. It depends on how you want it to be and the type of zip you are using, so the measurement is not static. So this is the back of the skirt. I'll be making a stitch there. So after stitching, I showed you what I had. Let's move on to the front face of the skirt and let's join what we produced at the back to it. So I'm making sure I have where I'll be fixing my zip, and this is the side. So you create, since the zip is going to be at the side, I created the allowance at the side. One thing about sewing is you need to have good finishing. So whenever you sew, make sure you trim off any excess or unwanted fabric from your work in order to produce a neater work. So after that, let's see what we've created. So as you can see, very pretty and simple. You can see our African print and its design and also the satin clearly. So I use this method in order for it not to confuse you where you'll be fixing your zip, because you will be joining the top bodies to the skirt. After pinning them together, all you have to do is move to your machine and make a 1/2 inch stitch. And let's see what we produced. Please don't forget to remove all the pins from your work after you are done stitching, so that you don't end up hurting somebody. So this is what we produced. Very nice and simple. This is where we'll be fixing our zip. Thank you very much for staying with me till this time, and please don't forget to post your comments. And also, if you enjoyed the video, Don't forget to give me a thumbs up and you subscribing as well. See you again in another class. Bye.